Okay. Smite 2 open beta update notes. General changes added a new HUD color setting to swap health bars to help colorblind players. I really liked using yellow and blue on Smite 1. We'll see if I change to that. Added contrast and color correction strength to help colorblind players. See, I like these. I think these look so much better. Dual picks and bans is a custom mode. Text chat. Ooh, to end match lobby. Wait, did they actually add Hun bots too? Wait, no way they added Hun bots also. Now provides strength or intelligence depending on which is higher. Good balance for characters like Medusa. I mean, later in the game, if like a Chalk takes a purple buff, they're getting a lot more value than this. This is the same thing. These are huge nerfs to hybrid scaling characters. This is really good. These characters like Chalk felt so broken with Fire Giant because you just got so much value from a Fire Giant. I like that they went this way. Layout update increased height of some islands to block long sights. I assume red buff is going to be one of those nerfs. Added more length to some islands to block line of sights. Their jungle paths, okay. Respawn timer of side harpies are 40 seconds longer. Wait, and they're worse. And they scale worse. Okay. Obsidian Dagger is now always 500. This is good if you're playing like Ymir. I think there's other characters too. Like if you Chalk ult and then you popped Obsidian Dagger, you'd take like 100 damage. Joust and Duel. For you Joust and Duel players, I'll leave it here for a second. I'm not that guy. I'm not that guy. You can pause and check it out. I have no opinion on these nerfs. Same with Assault. I don't really care. But you know what I do care about? Ranked Conquest. Yeah, I started reading this and then I realized I'm not that guy. I think it is basically just harder to trio queue and your games will be less broken, I think. Bug resulting in players getting or losing incorrect on quality of opposition. Ooh, okay. That's big. That's big. Skill adjustments. That factors quality of opposition mode. Okay, nice. We'll have slight adjustments made due to increased rank population building. Ooh, wait, that's cool. That means LATAM South and Oceania have gotten more players playing ranked. Backfill as a system is causing near random placements of players into ranked matches after a player failed to connect to the lobby initially for obvious reasons. This is able. Okay. This was cool, but yeah, if it's not working, it's not working. Matchmaking, don't care too much. In jungle practice, you can now use a target dummy totem instead of a Ymir bot. I'm not going to go through the Vulcan mod. There's a video from yesterday. If you guys are interested in the Vulcan mod, in the Vulcan video. But I go through his entire kit. And there's a lot of stuff to go through. Also, Hunbots is releasing in a week and a half. So Hunbots is still on the same timing, but Vulcan is just early. And again, I'll make a Hunbots video when Hunbots is coming out. New aspects. Again, aspects also on yesterday's video. Items. Okay. They've officially added Gilded Arrow into the game. And first thoughts is this is absolutely busted. 25 basic attack power, 8% lifesteal. Every 8 seconds. It's basically Gilded Arrow from Smite 1. A monster will, or an enemy minion will be marked, or a jungle monster will be marked. If you kill it, you get bonus gold, you get attack speed for 8 seconds, and you get mana from it. My issue is more so with this upgraded Gilded Arrow, Sharpshooter's Arrow, which is different from Smite 1's. It's 60 basic attack power, 10% attack speed, 15% lifesteal, and 15% critical strike chance, and all sources of gold are increased by 5%, which is kind of like Smite 1's Ornate, I think it was. And then basic attack damage increased by 20% when hitting a target over 7.5 meters away. which is very close to your maximum range, but still very, very crazy. I'm excited to try this. I want to play a few ADC games today to get a value of Sharpshooter's bow. Because realistically, I don't think Cowl's very good, and I don't think Death Toll's very good. That's the reason that Boombas felt so good to go, was that you weren't really giving up anything too good. But this looks actually incredible. The only few characters you probably wouldn't go on are characters that have a lot of value in their kit with their basic abilities. On her, maybe, I guess, but even on her, getting the extra basic attack power combined with this shred, it would probably feel really good. Honestly, even trying to think of a character that I wouldn't go sharpshooters on, I can't. I would probably go on everyone, except like Uller, obviously, who's building probably Bluestone at this point because of how many buffs have been changed. Stampede nerf. Now we get into the balance. Stampede, very, very, very strong, way too strong. Decreased physical protection from 55 to 45, decreased the active buff duration from 6 to 4, and removed the active attack speed buff. I think they probably could have hit the movement speed you get also, but I think it's fine. It's a good nerf. I think the Screeching Gargoyle nerf is a little bit less relevant. I think Gargoyles is still going to be very good, but I think Gargoyles has higher contestion. Like, you have to actually choose between other magical defense items, like Talisman of Purification, which is still very, very good. But Gargoyles is losing 5 cooldown rate, 20 down to 15, and it is also losing a 10% active protection debuff from 20 down to 10%. Tekko, Kage, and Gemma Focus are getting the same nerf. Every time you used an ability, you used to get 3% movement speed, stacking up to 9%. It's now 2%, stacking up to 6%. Very good nerfs. Too much movement speed in the game. Soul Gem is also losing 10 intelligence from 75 down to 65. I think these items are still all fine. It's just you had to take a little off the top. It was a little too much. Kinsblade. Decrease the passive max health damage from 3.5% to 3%. Passive reward. If the target has more max health than you, deal an additional 4% of the difference in max health. So just a small nerf to Kins. Honestly, it doesn't do anything. Kins is still going to be insane. I think Kins is even being bought too early. I think Kins is a good like 3rd, 4th slot item, and I think Xe is a good 3rd, 4th slot item. I think going Braggies first into those 2 items right away, unless Kins was just that OP that going it second was valuable, I think it is just pushing it an item back makes it feel a lot better to build also for hunters. And Braggies is still really strong, so it's probably either Braggies into Lifesteal or Devs into Braggies. You'd go probably Serrated. Worldstone buff. I think this is actually a pretty brutal nerf for Worldstone. You lose the 15 cooldown, you get a little bit more mana, some mana regen, and you get more cooldown on your ultimate. The reason they probably did this is because you get less value from your passive by having any CDR. The unfortunate part is this item is still 2,800 gold, which is insane. I think this item is still probably not buyable. I mean, maybe if you're playing like Neath mid and like the rest of your cooldowns don't really matter, you want to just be ulting off cooldown. But yeah. Chronos Pendant buff, getting 10 intelligence. I already thought this item was good. I think it's still good. It's better. Bloodbound book. I think this item is really strong, actually. The reason it wasn't buyable is because of you compare its stats with Soul Gem, and a lot of the times Soul Gem was just better. I think Bloodbound book as a survivability option is better than Soul Gem. Dagger of Frenzy. Very, very big buff to Dagger of Frenzy. Your next 5 autos after popping the passive or the active of Dagger of Frenzy, your autos are going to go wild, and if you get a kill, it resets it. So it's going to be very, very strong in like snowballing team fights. I think there's actually something to be said about maybe you buy this item on no intelligence scaling characters. Like on her with Braggies, you're not making any use of the intelligence. On her with Dagger of Frenzy, you're making 100% use of the entire item, and it's a good item. Nemean is now pre-mitigation instead of post-mitigation damage. Avenging Blade has lost 200 cost off of it from 2600 to 2400. Warrior's Axe is now 8 seconds and 10 seconds on the passive, and it's the same thing for the upgrade in Sundering Axe. It's now 8 seconds. I think these items are just, like, the passives are, well, the passive for Warrior's Axe is actually fine. The passive for Sundering Axe is really weak. Not a big fan of that item. Like, upgrading this one just feels so much worse than upgrading to, like, Bluestone. War Flag buff. Decreased max stacks from 10 to 6. Movement speed is now 0.5% instead of 0.25%, and decreased attack speed is now 1.25% instead of 0.5%. Actually, not a bad buff to War Flag. You're getting more movement speed, more attack speed. You're getting it quicker. I think there's something to be said about having the fully stacked item now for kind of taking fights. I actually think this is really good. And War Banner is getting... Oh, jeez. What is that? 21% movement speed, max stacked War Banner? Didn't we just nerf movement speed? And it's 20%? I guess it is on... What? I think it lasts 10 seconds. But that's still insane. That is insane. And the attack speed is really high also. 39% attack speed on the high end. That is actually crazy. Arrow's bow decreased active cooldown from 10 to 1 second. The effect is the mark is now indefinite. I mean, technically it was kind of indefinite anyway, because it would last the 10 seconds. But now you don't have to like spam it and like look back and make sure your teammate still has it before taking the fight again. This is going to be very, very good. Like very, very good. And you also can like change to the different targets a lot more quick. That is actually crazy. This item is a ton of healing. I was talking at Worlds with Benko, and he thought the item was broken, but it was bugged for a while where it wasn't in the game, so a lot of teams didn't even get to try it to know how good it was. I'm pretty sure if teams could practice with it and played and would have played with it, this item would have been bought in nearly every game. It is so good. Shifter Shield now grants either 40 strength. Okay, so this is just the same thing that they've kind of decided. You don't get both strength and intelligence from some items. You get one that's higher. Yeah, Boomba's Golden Dagger, the AoE, you don't get any more on jungle monsters. Or sorry, you don't get it on laning monsters. Minions. Uller nerf. Honestly, kind of getting out not too bad. Uller 2 is now a 5% nerf at every level, movement speed. And Hail of Arrows and Glory Bound is now a 15-second cooldown. His jump and his... yeah, Hail of Arrows. Wheeled bows and wheeled axes, he's getting very, very slightly less strength. I will say it always feels the worst on Uller when you hit his cooldowns over anything else. So maybe this does something, but I think his cooldowns are already so low and it can get so much more cooldown that it really doesn't... I don't think it's going to hurt him that much. Medusa nerf. A solid nerf to Medusa. Hitting her top, her level 1 damage of Viper Shot down 5. And it's down 5 at every rank, but it's always going to feel worse at level 1 because this is a 60% nerf. At level 2, it's only 25%. It's still a pretty meaty nerf to her. I think this is the second ability max. So you're going to be stuck at 10 damage for a while. Maybe you sneak a second point into this, and so it is more threatening, and keep 1 point to Viper Shot, into her 2, I can't remember what it's called, for a little bit longer, just to get a little bit more early damage, because a lot of her threat comes from Viper Shot's early damage. Decreasing it by this much hurts. And you also lose attack speed. Instead of 60%, it's 40%, scaling up to 60%. So, yeah, Medusa's level 1 Viper Shot is a lot less threatening. Jingwei with the most useless nerf in the entire patch, losing 10 flat damage on her 1. Yay. Also, the cooldown on her 1 is 13, scaling down to 11. It's now just going to be 13 seconds at all ranks. It doesn't do anything Jingwei, it's whatever. The character is, her transition to Smite 2 is so good for her because of, you can auto attack cancel your own 2, which is a buff that makes your auto damage do more, which procs Hydras. So it's just like all compiling things that just makes her more fluid, which allows her to just one-shot you and two-shot you and three-shot you. Hecate is getting a pretty sizable nerf. I don't know if you guys saw this at the LAN, but the genetics team, Team Risk, abused this bonus damage in a Fire Giant burn. They had the Hecate, they used this triplicate form, and then genetics turned into Anubis, 3 ulted it, and every single tick of Anubis ability, the ult, will do 30 plus 5% of his scaling damage. So they absolutely shredded it. It was not even, it was genuinely like a 4-second objective at 16,000 health. They just one-shot it. It was really good, cool use of the triplicate form, but this is very, very strong with those tick characters. It kind of hurts other characters that aren't tick characters because you get less, or you're getting less procs and they're just not as useful, but that's supposed to be like part of like tech with Hecate is tick characters with her, she'll shred objectives and stuff. So Soul Eater is also getting a little bit of a nerf, losing 10 int, also losing 1 second of cooldown. I think Hecate is still fine. It's just going to be, you know, a little off the top. Holy, a little bit of Aladdin nerfs. Maybe finally. Decreased dash damage scaling from 65 strength and 75 int to 55 strength and 65 int, so losing 10 scaling off of each. Decrease the punch damage, also down, losing 5 strength and then losing 6 at level 1 basic damage and 10 at level 5. So nerfs at every rank for Sultan's Grace. Agile Run. The landing damage is losing 5 strength from 45 down to 40 and 5 int from 60 down to 55. The genie damage is also dropping it 10 strength from 60 down to 50 and then 30 down to 25 int. And then the max range is also decreased also, which is probably going to be the biggest nerf for any of his stuff. Yeah, probably going to be the biggest nerf to Aladdin is going to be the range that Agile Run allows him to go. And then lastly, Into the Lamp. Decrease the non-combatant increased damage from combatants from 25% to 12.5%. So before, if you went into Aladdin's lamp late, Aladdin would one-shot you. Now he'll only partially one-shot you, and you still don't do any damage to him. You still do 25% reduced damage. A little bit of an Aphrodite nerf, and they're actually hitting 2 things that I'm glad they're hitting. I think these are 2 of the stronger parts of her kit when she's played in support. The movement speed is going down. It used to be 6 to 10%, it's now 6 to 8%, and the protection shared is now 10% to 8%. I think this is actually a good nerf. I think the next thing, if she is still deemed strong, I think the ultimate should be like 120 scaling down to 100. I don't mind Aphrodite's late game being strong. I hate Aphrodite's laning phase being impossible to play against. Forcing out her ult, I think, once and then having it up in 2 minutes versus in 1 minute and 40 seconds, I think allows for a little bit more potential to punish her. Also, a massive raw shift to his 2. And this is genuinely massive because it's a massive buff to full damage raw and a massive nerf to laning raw, at least in the earlier portions of the game. Drummy, think of the follow. Divine Light, his 2. The auto attack ray you get after, instead of 25 scaling up to 135, it is now 10 scaling to 50, but it now scales at 85% int. 85% int is insane. That is crazy good. And honestly, now that I'm thinking about this, I think if you play, I'm just thinking, I still think the other raw build will be really good, but I think if you play raw solo with the aspect and build somewhat similar, but build a little bit more int in your build, I think you're still going to be pretty impossible to gank because of the healing from your 3 ultimate, and you'll kill just as easily because of how high your 2 scaling is. Because 85% int is insane. And if you just build a little bit of survivability, they won't be able to kill you. Poseidon nerf, or Poseidon buff, sorry. Tidal Surge, his 1 is now 10 extra damage at every rank. 90 up to 250 is now 100 up to 260, and also 5% in intelligence. Whirlpool is also getting an extra 5% int on it. 15 int up to 20 int, and Release the Kraken is also getting 10% int back, 90 up to 100%. So 3 reverts back to Poseidon. I guess they over-nerfed him. Bacchus buff, Belly Flop is now a 14-second cooldown instead of 15 seconds, and Belch of the Gods is now 12 scaling down to 10 instead of 13 scaling down to 11. A couple pretty big nerfs to Bacchus, or pretty big buffs to Bacchus. His cooldowns were a little high, allowing him to spam a little bit more in laning phase, makes him harder to play against, so it would help his laning phase a lot. I don't think it does too much to his late game, because usually only getting 1 flop anyway. Maybe 2 Belches, though, so maybe that's something there. Soul buff, Radiance. 10 extra damage at all ranks. It also decreased the cooldown by 1. Stellar Burst. A couple bugs with Stellar Burst. Supernova reduced the consequent hit reduction from 70... Okay. Whew. The subsequent hit reduction from 70% to 35%. So that second hit will do 70%, and then the third hit and everyone after will do 35%. So it's like if you go 1-2 onto somebody, that's going to be a lot of damage. And then 1, 2, 3 is going to be meh. And then 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 is going to be meh, 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 meh. But this second hit is going to do a lot of damage. Probably the issue I have, you have to figure out a way to get a good amount of int into Soul's build, because her ultimate does nothing if you don't build int. And her ultimate actually one-shots if you build intelligence. But I don't think there's any way to build high intelligence while also being a consistent auto attacker. So then you're stuck in this weird limbo of either you choose ability and you're basically a combo mage 2 ult without any setup, or you're an auto attack mage where your ult doesn't do anything. Your 2 does scale with intelligence and strength, so it scales pretty decently anyway, but Neath buff. Fuck Neath. Spirit Arrow. Increased damage scaling from 70%, from 90% strength plus 70% intelligence to 95 strength, 75% intelligence, so 5% scaling there. Unravel is also getting a damage buff. 5 at level 1 and 25 at level 5. Also 5% strength and 10% int. A lot of damage buffs, or a lot of damage added into Neath's kit. And then Backflip is also slowing by 30% for 2 scaling up to 4 seconds. Neath might be back. Neath might be back. That is... Wait. 2, 3... Oh, they're just missing a 2.5. Okay. Yeah, Neath might be back. That's kind of crazy. Damn, this is a meaty balance patch. I guess we're getting down to the bottom of it. Danzaburo passive. Danzaburo's clone, we're not getting any stats from Danza. As a result, this ability has undergone a significant rebalance pass. It now deals 10 plus 1 per level damage. Non-talent equals 10% basic attack damage. The talent is now 12.5% scaling up to 17.5%. The aspect. Alluring Spirits is also 14 down to 12 seconds instead of 16 down to 12 seconds. Tanuki Trickery is also getting more damage. 10 up to 50 is now 20 up to 60 on that next auto attack. Kind of a big buff to Danzaburo. That's it makes you want to try Danz. I think Danz could be pretty decent. Maybe Danzaburo's like the one character where not having any strength off of your starter would feel bad, because he's got a lot of damage in his kit, but his talent scaling off of his basic attack damage, 60 basic attack damage is crazy. His talents are going to be swinging. Or sorry, his aspect. Talent is aspect. I don't know why they have it as talent. This is just the aspect. So the non-aspect is 10%. The aspect is 12, scaling up to 17. Cabrakan buff. Shadow Zone is getting a 1% buff to its damage mitigation, which is a good start. Refraction Shield is also getting a massive, and Seismic Crush are both getting massive damage increases. 65 up to 265 is now going to be 80 up to 300 for Refraction Shield, and Seismic Crush is now 65 up to 220, instead of 65 to 225 is 80 up to 260. Really, really big buffs to Cabrakan. I played Cabrakan in support yesterday, and he actually didn't feel that bad. He feels terrible in jungle, though. Any damage in the kit, it does not feel like he uses very well. However, maybe. That's a lot of damage buff. That's a lot of damage. Stormkata. Why? Okay. Susano buffs. I'll read it and then I'll talk about it because I've got an issue with the path that Susano's going. Susano is getting base damage and scaling damage on his one, and also the cooldown is going down. It was 40 up to 140 plus 50%, is now 50 up to 150 plus 55%. The spin is now 50 up to 150 plus 55 instead of 40 up to 140 plus 50. And the cooldown is also 12 seconds down to 10 instead of 14, scaling down to 10. On top of that, Typhoon is getting a damage buff. The tick damage is up at 5, or from 10 up to 30 is now 15 up to 35. The strength is now scaling at 12% instead of 10%. The max damage is scaling up from, instead of 200 to 440, is 210 to 450. And it's also getting a strength percent increase from 105 to 110. It is also going down to a 90-second cooldown. The problem with Susano is when he was originally released, he was very strong. Very, very strong. Don't get it wrong. He was very, very strong. However, they nerfed his damage, and then 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 they started buffing him back up, and they hit his cooldowns. His Stormkata being a 12 scaling down to 10-second cooldown is not needed. The problem is his abilities are unimpactful. So if he gets ahead, Susano's auto attacks just carry his damage. If you're playing against a really good Susano who's, you know, snowballing, and he ganks your lane, you're like, holy cow, he killed me, one-shot me, and he also got away. Yeah, it's because his auto attack cancels, carries damage, and he's just got super low cooldowns and a lot of mobility. I suggested that they shift this one from being low cooldown and unimpactful to high cooldown and to impactful. Then the lower level Susanos and also Susanos who are behind still have value, where you can just kind of go in, maybe spam your 1, hit a 2, hit a 3, and then just dash out with any auto attack canceling. You'll still do a decent amount of damage, but you're not going to carry a fight that way. The issue now, I don't know if this is enough, because Susano was really, really bad, but the issue now is, if a Susano gets ahead, he's even harder to deal with. It's easier to get ahead, and it's easier also to play him when he's, like in like the middle ground of being just fine. You want them to dumb down Susano? Susano's already been dumbed down. Are you trolling? Nemesis buff. Swift Vengeance. Decrease the cooldown from 13 down to 11 is now 11 seconds at all ranks. Slice and Dice is also getting a damage buff. It's going to be 70 up to 190 instead of 60 up to 180. And then the center damage is just double of this damage. Yeah. Just a bunch of balance pass over. But yeah, now we get to Vulcan also. And that is OB2.